of anti-Semitism is currently being weaponized against anybody who opposes what Israel's doing to the Palestinians right now. They're trying to change the definition to say that anti-Zionism, being against Zionism, means you are anti-Semitic. Not only are they trying to say it, they're trying to put that definition into law. In multiple states, South Dakota, Georgia, they passed a resolution in the House of Representatives, all because if they can define anti-Semitism as anti-Zionism, then anybody who is against the oppression of the Palestinians can be told that they're anti-Semitic. When that's not true, being against oppression has nothing to do with Jewish identity. Zionism is a settler movement. They colonized Palestine. They moved in there and took control. Zionism needs to oppress the Palestinians because they want an ethno-state. And if Palestinians live inside of Israel, they can't have an ethno-state. So they have to force them out. They have to force them away to expand. They can't have the Palestinians there. A lot of these laws and lawmakers are trying to base their definitions off of the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism, which not only says that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, but also says that comparing Zionists to Nazis is anti-Semitic. Both Nazism and Zionism are in the same bucket, in the same category. They're both extreme right movements. They're both nationalist movements. They both wanted an ethno-state. The only difference between the two is that the ideal human, the ideal population between the two is different. Aryans, Zionist, Jews. Nobody can say I'm wrong when I tell you that Nazism is a terrible, hateful, extreme right ideology. What's the difference between criticizing one dangerously hateful ideology and the next? I wish I had enough time in this video to show you how similar the extreme government that's currently running Israel is to Nazi Germany's government and their practices and policies. I've made videos nearly 10 minutes long talking about this. I want you to go find them if you are interested, because the exact similarities are uncanny. Zionists want to protect themselves from being criticized. Showing the similarities between Zionists and Nazis is one of the strongest arguments I think you could make. They want to stop people from being able to make those comparisons. Anyways, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you want to support me as a person, I'm saving to go to college this year. You can go to my bio to help out. Thank you, and free Palestine.
All right, so here's a few things, okay? First of all, not everybody who's anti-Zionist is anti-Semitic, even though they're effectively are supporting something that hurts Jewish people a lot. They're not intentionally, all of them are being anti-Semitic. But let's be honest, a lot of them are, okay? A lot of people hide their anti-Jewish hatred behind just acting like they're just against Israel. And once you start listening to them and their arguments and the things that they get angry over, it's pretty obvious. Like, at least be honest enough to acknowledge that a lot of anti-Zionism that we're seeing, a lot of anti-Israel that we're seeing, is fueled by anti-Jewish hatred. Even if you want to make the point that not all of it are, which I will agree with you, not all of it is, but at least say it. Look, I'm being honest. I'm mentioning both sides. I acknowledge the people who are maybe against Israel but don't hate Jewish people. So I acknowledge that. So why don't you also provide the other side? Why don't you also acknowledge that a lot of anti-Jewish hatred is hidden behind all of this anti-Zionism or anti-Israel take? Like, at least mention the existence of it. Go on, Rivka.
Okay, this kid, my head wanted to explode. And I wanted to reach through the screen and grab him. So, first of all, I'm on the International Holocaust Remembrance, the IHRA page, and I can read you what it says about definition of anti-Semitism. And it says, certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews, rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jews or non-Jewish individuals and their property, towards Jewish communities, institutions, religious facilities. That's one aspect of it. And then they make all these things, but it doesn't say anything about Zionism. But the thing that he's failing to understand is criticizing an ideology, but then saying stuff like Israel has no right to exist. Israelis don't have a right to exist. That, I think, definitely hides a lot of anti-Semitism, because or it was a made up country, or it's their settlers, all of these things, which, by the way, all of those countries in the region were made up, if you want to bring that up. Lebanon, the borders of Iraq, the borders of, there's so much of that kind of thing. But this idea, the thing that really gets me is he, again, is making his argument based on assumptions that are lies that people think are true. They're settlers. They're not indigenous. So they just keep building this mountain of lies. And so in order to take it down, you have to keep going lower and lower and lower. It's very difficult to have to keep peeling away this onion, because he's built this whole thing on things that aren't necessarily true. But the thing that really made me crazy is this Holocaust inversion tactic that people like to use a lot, to get Jews. And it got me. It makes me mad, but his thing about the comparison between not what the Israel is doing and what the Nazis did. There's no concentration camps. They're not putting their Arab citizens in jail. They haven't, people have said things that are hateful and bigoted in Israel. Absolutely. That doesn't mean they're Nazis. And
every country has that.
This was exactly what I was going to say. But the way he said, no one can dispute with me that Nazism is bad. It's such a childlike argument. The pinnacle in modern thought of bad people, bad governments, hate are Nazis. So if you say Nazis are bad, no one's going to disagree with me, because we already all think that they're the worst that could possibly be. They're almost like not even real almost in some people's minds. And if I say the Jews are Nazis, what I'm really saying, or the Israelis are Nazis, what I'm really saying is they're the worst that ever existed. And everybody knows that. So boom, argument done. I don't have to provide evidence. I don't have to bring the other side. I don't have to think logically. I don't have to dissect these arguments, whether they're true or not. I just have to say they're Nazis. Nazis are bad. Therefore, they're bad. Boom. End of argument.
Okay, I have 3 points to make. Okay, first of all, I've been to Israel. I talked to a lot of people. And when you ask them what Zionism means, you get different answers, right? So given that you get different answers, when I think of Zionism, I try to see what is the common, thing that you could find among all these definitions. No, it's basically Israel existing. If you think Israel should exist, the idea of Israel existing, okay, that is Zionism. So basically, Zionism to me, based on everything, so we have bad versions of Zionism and reasonable versions of Zionism. We have like crazy fascist Zionists, and we have liberal, sane Zionists. We have all kinds of Zionists, right? But to this core, it's basically Israel's nationalism. That's what Zionism is. So just like nationalism, where we have like crazy fascistic nationalism, and we have civic forms of nationalism, which is in line with liberal values, Zionism also have like different strains of it, good ones and bad ones. But Zionism is basically Israel's nationalism. That's all it is. Okay. So, and given that even if you're not trying to be anti-Jewish, by saying Israel should not exist, if you're against Zionism, you're basically against Israel's existence. And here, I'm not misrepresenting what Zionism here, given that what he like, at least he thinks Israel shouldn't exist. So when he's anti-Zionist, I'm not putting words in his mouth by saying that he thinks Israel shouldn't exist, because he made it clear that he's against Israel existing even as a country, which is very hypocritical for a person that has a U.S. flag behind them. I mean, is that supportive of U.S.? Like, is this guy a proud American? Like, is that what the flag is supposed to represent? Right? Isn't that like, I don't understand. Like, this guy has a U.S. flag around.
I think that,
I don't know.
To your point about existence and Zionism, it definitely is. And that's why I brought that up about saying they shouldn't exist. But also, it's an idea of self-determination, which for Jewish people, and I think that
But-
this guy being American is really interesting because Americans are
But let me
really
finish.
about that.
Yeah, let me finish my point. Okay, so he is because so here's why I say that this guy, even if he's not intending, he's being anti-Jewish, right? Because United States Foundation was a lot more aggressive than Israel's foundation. Okay, like if you're looking for genocide, that look in US's foundation, okay, and what they did to the natives. And we're not arguing, nobody's arguing for United States not to exist, even though it had a very bloody, barbaric, genocidal foundation. But when Israel was founded, they didn't start the war. The people who came there didn't start the war. They were attacked. And then they responded to 6 countries attacking on them. There were enough land. When Israel was founded, we had enough land for everybody to go around. That land did not belong to anybody because the only legal entity that owned that land was the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire didn't exist anymore. Other places, we already had countries. We had no countries here. It made sense for us to, when we were looking for Jews and the right for them to have the right to self-determination and the right to control their own destiny, if we wanted to give Jews a country, this was an ideal spot, not because this was the land of their ancestors, but because there was no country here. This was no one's country. The Ottoman Empire had failed, and there was empty land for everybody to go around. And given how much anti-Jewish hatred was all around Europe and other places in the Middle East, this was a great place. And if the Arab countries did not attack the Jews right at the foundation of Israel, this would have been a win-win for everybody. So this is not even comparable to the brutality of the foundations of the United States. This could have been a lot more civil if the Arab countries didn't attack the Jews and they just accepted 2 countries, Palestine and Israel, living side by side. So, but you are against Israel's foundation existing because of that foundation, and you are celebrating United States as a country with a flag behind you. So what is the difference? The difference is one of them is Jewish. Again, this is why I'm saying that we don't go around and saying other countries shouldn't exist. Other countries also had much more bloodier, much more genocidal, much more brutal foundations. I mean, 22 out of the 22 Arab countries that we have, right? 21 of them was founded in this way, through conquest, through bloodshed. I don't see people going around and saying they shouldn't exist. I don't see people going around and saying those Arab countries should be given back to whoever the people were before then. I don't see people going out and saying give back Canada to the natives or give Australia back to the natives. No same. I mean, there's some crazy people do, but he's not doing that. He's not doing that with the United States. He's a proud American. He looks European to me. What are you doing in North America? Go back to Europe. Like he should go back to Europe.
That's part.
So
of
what is it about Israel?
It's
what is it about Israel?
They're Jews.
Yeah.
And also, it's not just that they're Jews. I'm sorry, I'm making an emotional argument here, but I really do feel this is true. It's not just that they're Jews, it's that they successfully defend their country. They won those wars. They weren't. I honestly feel like there is this strain of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism that is against Israel and Jews simply because they haven't failed, because they're not laying down and dying, because they're willing to defend themselves. And the point that you were making
that's
about
a claim.
The not existence.
But that's our claim.
It's true.
Yeah, go on.
Where that's big part of it. I've heard people say they shouldn't exist. It's a sham. It's, it's a colony, all of these things. But I don't hear that argument from about any other countries. And this idea that you can't criticize Israel, that's BS. People criticize it all the time. In Israel, Israelis criticize it. So, and his Nazi thing, I keep going back to that because that is this psychological trick that he's playing on people, by inverting this Holocaust narrative and saying that these people shouldn't exist because they're Nazis. Just like we wiped the Nazis out, we have to wipe out this country and this ideology and these people.
So, Rivka, the point I'm trying to make here, our claim is that this is about Israel being Jews, okay? But this is our claim. The reason I'm trying to provide two evidence for why this claim is true, right? Because the double standard, because no country is being held to the standard that Israel is being held to when it comes to its right to exist, because that's what Zionism is, right? Zionism is Israel's right to exist. And when you question Zionism, you're questioning Israel's right to exist in a way that you don't question other countries' right to exist. So what is it about Israel that is different? So that's my evidence that this is about them being Jews. That's my evidence that why anti-Zionism is anti-Jewish hatred, because you don't have the same standard for other countries' right to exist. That's one. Another reason, okay? This guy seems to be a leftist American that is proud to have an American flag behind him, okay? I'm almost sure that he's not proud to have had Trump as a president. Almost sure, okay? But imagine the hypocrisy when you want to question Zionism and Israel's rights to existence because they have a right-leaning government. And you're like, hey, listen, I know I have told you credible things about like the government of Israel. Okay, what about you? You had Trump. I mean, you don't endorse Trump. So should we question United States rights to existence because you had Trump as president? Like, again, should we, let me go further.
How about
Does Iran exactly, that's what I wanted to say. Exactly. Does Iran has a right to exist as a country? Do Iranian people have a right to have Iran, given that their government is worse than Likud? Their government is the Islamic Republic of Iran. They have the number one state sponsor of terror as their government. Should we now deny Iran's right to exist because of the bad government? What are you talking about? Yes, it doesn't fall. Again, the double standard. You're like, oh my God, this government is so far right. Yes, and why are you questioning Zionism because of that? Why are you questioning Israel's right to exist because of that? Is it because they're Jewish? If it's not because they're Jewish, why the double standard? Why other countries are not held to the same standard? That's why we think so many times that anti-Zionism is anti-Jewish hatred. That's why these are the steps that we take. We notice the double standard around the world.
It gives good cover to people too. And I think your point about the government is really important because people always talk about that. Like, look at this, the Likuds, look at some of their far right leanings, look at some of the things they wanted to do, as if it's the only government that has ever existed in the history of Israel or will ever exist, right? This is a easy talking point for people. Oh, I don't like Netanyahu, Likuds are, far right, therefore the whole country's bad. And your point about Trump or Iran, you don't see that people say when people talk about the Islamic Republic, they always make a point to say, oh, but the people of Iran are separate from this. And they do this with the Hamas. It's not the Palestinians, it's the Hamas. But for some reason, they can't separate the people in Israel or the idea of Israel from who happens to be in power at that moment. Because right before this, they had a different coalition just recently.
Yeah.
So it is anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
It is this idea that these people in this place don't have a right to exist.
Yeah, they and these people often would not tell you, and here's the hypocrisy. They're so anti-Israel that they won't tell you that the only reason why we know so much garbage about Likud is because of Israel's media and Israel's journalism and all the brave activists and journalists in Israel that go and dig this stuff up for us, for you to come take all the amazing work by Israeli journalists and to use it against Israel's existence as a whole. without giving credit to the Israelis who managed to dig out these information.
Not only managed to dig it out, but present it to the world and live to tell about it the next day, unlike a lot of other places. You know?
Exactly. Yes,
So
exactly.
they go out there, they say these things, and then they go home and get up the next morning and do it again.